Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today on Untold Evidence. We are finishing off one of our latest React series, 3 episodes, all about Heather Lynn and her experience on the Danny Jones podcast. We've gone deep into Sumerian texts. We've gone deep into a lot of ancient culture. We finish off this reaction series with the occult. Now, it's been a word that's been buried under so much black candle wax and so many bad films that most of us have forgotten what it actually means. It doesn't mean evil, and it doesn't mean satanic. Occult just means hidden, concealed, out of sight. A doctor will tell you that occult blood is blood you can't see with the naked eye, and that's the real meaning, hidden in plain sight. And it's the perfect place to finish, because this whole story, the one Danny and Heather spent nearly 2.5 hours going around, is a story about things that are hidden. Hidden history, hidden knowledge, hidden keepers. The idea that someone somewhere has always known the truth about where we came from and has been sitting on it. I think anyone who watches this channel will be nodding their heads. So this is part 3, the close. In the first one, which I called the dig, we got our hands dirty with the archaeology, that so-called knowledge filter, the buried excavations in Iraq. In the second, the Sumerians. We went into the tablets themselves, the base 60 maths, the real story of Sumer, the oldest civilization we can point to. Today, we have to go into the dark, the hidden part, the occult part. And we ask the only question that really matters by the end of all this. Not what did the Anunnaki teach us? The question is simpler and stranger than that. Who has been keeping it secret? Why? And is any of it real? So let me set the table honestly, the way I always try to do. Heather Lynn, as we've said, is a credentialed historian. She has a doctorate. And here's the thing people forget when they cite her as an ancient aliens believer. She doesn't buy the Stitchins theory. She said it herself. The man who invented the modern Anunnaki, the man who told the world that the Nibiru was a hidden 12th planet full of gold mining gods, got the translation wrong. And that's not being a skeptic in the comment section. That's the position of the actual expert, and it's a position Heather Lynn is closer to than most of her audience realizes. So as we go today into the hidden chambers, hold on to that. The person at the center of this conversation agrees the foundation stone is cracked. So now is the fun bit. Let's go hunting for secrets. We're going to start at the beginning with the oldest secret keepers we can possibly document, the mysterious cults. In the ancient world, there were religions you joined in public, and there were religions you were initiated into in private. The most famous were the Eleusinian mysteries, held at Eleusis, near Athens. For the better part of 2,000 years, people travelled across the Greek world to take part. Emperors went, philosophers went. And here's the remarkable part. We still don't fully understand what happened in those inner ceremonies. The initiates were sworn to silence, and for all intents and purposes, they kept it. For 2 millennia, thousands of people held a secret, and it held. The penalty for revealing that secret was often death. So now that's a tier 1 fact, documented. The mysteries existed, the secrecy was real, and it worked. What was actually revealed inside, well, that's where it slides into tier 2 and tier 3. Some scholars think it was a dramatic reenactment of death and rebirth. Some think there was a psychoactive drink involved, brewed from grain fungus, that they gave initiates a genuine altered experience. And we covered the poppy in the temple in part 2. So I'm not going to dismiss any of the ideas that ancient people had a pharmacological underbelly. But notice what we've got here, a real documented tradition of hidden knowledge kept by an elite, passed by initiation only, and that's the seed of the whole occult idea. And it's true, it wasn't just Greece. Go to Pythagorean and their brotherhood, the followers of Pythagoras in the 6th century before Christ. There was a genuine secret society built around mathematics and music, and the belief that the number was the hidden key to reality. Members were sworn to secrecy, and there's a famous chilling legend attached to them. The story goes that one of their own, a man named Hipposus, revealed the existence of the irrational numbers, numbers that cannot be written as a neat fraction, and that the Brotherhood was so horrified by that leak of forbidden truth that they drowned him at sea. Now let's flag that hard. That drowning is tier 3. It's a legend told centuries later. It may never have happened. But the Brotherhood itself, the secrecy, the idea that some mathematical truths were dangerous, had to be guarded. And that is real. So when Heather Lynn and people in this field talk about lost wisdom guarded by initiates, they're not inventing the structure out of nothing. The structure is real. The question is only ever about the content. What did they actually know? And there, honestly, the answer is mostly, we just don't know. And the people claiming they do are usually selling something. So from the ancient mysteries, the thread runs forward to the people who try to revive them. And this is where it gets properly strange, because it's a better documented than most folk realise. Hermeticism. These names are so hard. This is the body of writing attributed to a figure called Hermes, which means Hermes, the thrice great. He was imagined as an ancient Egyptian sage who had the keys to the universe, and the texts are real, they survived. They talk about the mind of God, the structure of the cosmos, the idea that human being is a kind of mirror of the heavens, as above, so below. You've heard that phrase before. That's Hermetic. Now, for centuries, people believed these writings came from deep Egyptian antiquity, older than Moses, a hidden stream of wisdom that survived the fall of the ancient world. The belief drove the whole Renaissance occult revival. But here's the counter-narrative early, and it's a good one, because it shows you exactly how this pattern works. In 1614, a scholar named Isaac Casaubon did the linguistics and showed that the Hermetic texts were not ancient Egyptian at all. They were written in the earlier centuries after Christ in Greek by people steeped in Greek philosophy. The hidden ancient wisdom was a few centuries younger than advertised and a hell of a lot less Egyptian. The secret was real, but the dating was a fantasy. And remember that shape because we're going to see it again and again today. The thing is genuinely old and genuinely mysterious. The specific origin story is what is contested. And it wasn't only the Hermetic texts. There's a whole family of hidden knowledge traditions, and the word for the family is sitting right there in the title of this episode. The Gnostics took their name from the Greek word for knowledge, because they taught that salvation didn't come from faith or from good works. It came from the secret knowledge, a hidden truth about the cosmos, and the only initiated would receive this. And that's the occult instincts in its purest form, saving knowledge locked away for the few. Alongside them ran the Kabbalah, the stream of Jewish mysticism that treats scripture as a coded surface with hidden layers underneath, letters and numbers concealing the architecture of creation. And threading through all of it, the alchemists, men like Paracelsus, the 16th century physician who blended real chemistry and real medicine with the dream of transmuting metal and unlocking the secret of life. The common thread never changes. There is a hidden truth older and deeper than what we've been told, and it is reversed for those who are worthy. Now hold that promise in your mind, because in a while we're going to watch it and walk through it into modern times and men with lab coats. And the very same year, 1614, something else surfaces in Germany, a pamphlet, the first of the Rosicrucian Manifestos. Now here's a secret society that announced itself by accident, or maybe by design, depending on who you believe. Between 1614 and 1617, 3 documents appeared in Europe. The Farmer Fraternitas, the Confessio, and a strange alchemical story called the Simical Wedding. And they told the tale of Christian Rosicrucian, a German who supposedly travelled to the east around the year 1400, learned wisdom from the wise men in Damascus, brought it home, and founded an invisible brotherhood that had been quietly working ever since. The Rosicrucians, the Brotherhood of the Rose Cross. And their manifesto promised a reformation of the entire world. They said a secret science has been kept hidden for decades until humanity was ready to receive it. And they sparked an absolute frenzy. People across Europe wrote open letters begging to be let in. The trouble was, nobody could find the door. There was no address, no members, and no way to join. The famous secret society in Europe might have never existed as an actual organisation at all. So this is where we desperately need our tiers. Tier 1, the documented part. The manifestos are real and they were published. They influenced serious people. The Hermetic philosophy, Henrik Kunrath, fed into them. So did the work of John Dee, the English mathematician and occultist who advised Queen Elizabeth I. Figures like Robert Flood and possibly Francis Bacon, got to do an episode on Francis Bacon, were drawn into this cult. And their ideas eventually flowed into the Freemasonry and in the 19th century into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a Victorian magical society that counted poets and writers amongst its members. And that's all real history and we can read that. And tier 2, the contested part, was there ever an actual brotherhood with members and a chain of secret knowledge? Or were the manifestos a clever piece of theatre, maybe political satire, maybe even a religious provocation, dreamed up by a small circle of Protestant intellectuals who wanted to stir the pot? Serious scholars genuinely disagree. A lot of them lean towards a hoax, a story that was never meant to be taken as a literal fact. Now we get to tier 3, the speculative part, the part that the powers endlessly documented. The idea that the Rosicrucians were real, are still real, have never stopped, and are sitting on the actual hidden knowledge, the truth about the pyramids, the truth about the Anunnaki, the bloodline of the gods, that they govern the world from the shadows and always have. Again, if you've been on this channel, we do talk a lot about that. And even if you're not a UFO or a sort of conspiracy alternative thinker, I think nearly every single person on the planet would be confused about how we are led. I don't think anyone can blanket say that these are definitely not here, these sort of hidden occult elites, all these words that we say all the time that we never really know what they mean. And I think all of this is obviously tier 3, but with a tier 1 underbelly that we just can't pinpoint right now. So you know how much it frustrates me that I have to put this in tier 3. But until it is documented, official, verifiable, we will always stay true to that methodology. Because it is seductive to try and put this in tier 1, but it is mostly empty. The manifestos themselves told you the game. They say, and I'm quoting the spirit of it, "We speak unto you into parables, but would willingly bring you to the knowledge of all secrets." And that's the hook every secret society has used for 400 years. We have the secrets, trust us, come closer, and the moment you come closer, the secret recedes. That's always another veil. That's not a sign of hidden depth. Quite often it's a sign that there's nothing behind the curtain in the first place. And the same goes for the brotherhood of all conspiracy energy eventually flows into, the Freemasons. Here, finally, is a secret society that genuinely exists openly, with lodges in your town and probably someone you know inside. Tier 1 documented. The first Grand Lodge was formed in London in 1717. The order built itself out of the old stonemasonry guilds and dressed itself in exactly the symbolism we've been tracking all episode. The geometry, the hidden temple of Solomon, the all-seeing eye. And it really did reach into power. A lot of the men who founded the United States were Masons. George Washington took his oath of office on a Masonic Bible. That's not a theory, that is recorded history. So this is the one where the believers feel vindicated, and I'm not going to take that away. A real, secretive fraternity full of symbols woven through the establishment that exists. That is what we're all worried about. But there is a tier 3 leap, and it is a bit of a whopper. The law says the Masons are a hidden world government, the keepers of an ancient secret, the bloodline of the gods steering history from behind the throne. And when you actually look, what you find is a little bit more ordinary. By the account of the historians and of the order itself, modern Freemasonry is mostly a fraternal and charitable club. Men networking, raising money for hospitals, performing rituals that feel profound to members and faintly daft to everyone else. Now the secrecy is real, but it's the secrecy of handshakes and passwords, not of the hidden civilization. And here's the killer detail, at least for our purpose. In 300 years, with all the reach and all the ritual, No Mason has ever produced the secret either. No tablet, no proof of the Anunnaki, no lost technology. If the great secret were really sitting in the lodge somewhere, you'd think after 3 centuries of ambitious, well-connected members, something would slip. But as of yet, it just hasn't. And the simple reason, probably the likeliest, the grand secret of the centre of the maze, is that there is no grand secret. It's just the maze, and the people who feel chosen are inside it. But here's why I'm not going to laugh it off, and why I keep the counter-narrative honest in both directions. The hunger these societies fed was real. People genuinely believed the ancients knew things we'd lost, and sometimes uncomfortably, the line between hidden mystical knowledge and real discovery was much, much thinner than we'd like to admit. And let me prove to you what the most respectable name in the history of science: Isaac Newton. We remember Newton for gravity, the laws of motion, for inventing a whole branch of mathematics. The man who built the modern clock. We rarely told, in school at least, is that Newton spent most of his life on alchemy and hunting hidden codes in the Bible than he ever spent on physics. That's kind of nuts, right? The most famous physician of all time spent more time on trying to decode the Bible than he did on physics. He wrote something like 1,000,000 words on alchemy. He was searching for the philosopher's stone. He believed there was an ancient secret wisdom hidden by the ancient words in myth and scripture, and he thought he could decode it. The founder of modern physics was in his own private hours an occultist in the fullest sense of that word. And here's the part that lands like a punch. When Newton died, his family looked at these papers, the alchemy, the secret biblical chronology, and they were so embarrassed that they suppressed them, hidden away, deemed unfit to print. The papers sat in the private hands for roughly 2 centuries. They were finally sold off for auction in 1936, and a big chunk was bought by the economist John Maynard Keynes, who read them, was stunned, and said that Newton was not the first scientist of the age of reason. He was the last of the magicians. Now sit with that, because it's the truest thing in the whole episode. I do want to do a bit of a background in John Maynard Keynes' life, because things like this being hidden for centuries don't thrill me with the official story. I think when you're hiding something for that long, there is something there to be hidden, and I'm not a full believer that any one person or institute is going to reveal all of those secrets. So let's just sit with that fact that a real cover-up, a genuinely hidden pieces of knowledge, the occult papers of the greatest scientist who ever lived, deliberately concealed by his own heirs for 200 years because it didn't fit the tidy story. Not a conspiracy, documented fact. So when somebody tells you that the establishment hid from what doesn't fit their image, you don't have to reach for aliens. You can point at Newton in his own work. But watch what the honest version of the story actually says, because this is the hinge of the entire trilogy. Newton's alchemy was hidden, yes, and it was also mostly wrong. He never made the philosopher's stone. He never transmuted lead into gold. The hidden knowledge once recovered turned out to be a brilliant man chasing a dead end, at least for what we know now. What changed the world was not Newton's secret wisdom, it was Newton's public method. The bit he wrote down, shared, and let other people test and tear apart. The occult Newton gave us nothing that lasted, at least in the public domain. The open Newton gave us the modern world. The secrecy didn't protect the truth, the sharing did. Now that is interesting, but as we know with Bob Lazar, are we all certain that Newton nailed it? I have no idea if Newton proposed anti-gravity and it was hid. I honestly don't. Whenever there is secret occults, Freemasonry, all that stuff, for one, I do not believe that they will share some of the most powerful details. I think it's Giorgiani that said Lockheed had a rocket that could go to, or a craft that could go to Mars within an hour. And that was in the 50s, 1950s. I don't know just how technologically advanced the occult, this hidden part of humanity, are, and how long it has been superseding us. So while all of this talk about Newton I do want to take seriously, I do have to put that asterisk around it by saying I don't know if everything Isaac Newton theorized and worked on is in the public domain. But let me take that idea, the knowledge filter, and follow it into the present, because it obviously cuts both ways and we want a strong version. Go back to part 1, the dig, and that knowledge filter. The claim was there was an academic establishment quietly screening out evidence that doesn't fit. So that is genuinely an anonymous find, and it would get buried, not by conspiracy, but by the carers and reputation and the fear of looking foolish. I told you that in the strongest version, a deliberate cover-up of aliens is tier 3 and thin, but the weak version, that institutions resist ideas that threaten them, is tier 1, and it is among the best documented things in the history of science. And here's a case that absolutely proves that, and it's got nothing to do with aliens, it's about money. For about 200 years, every economic student in the world was taught the same origin story. Once upon a time, before money, people bartered. You had a chicken, I had a shoe, we swapped it. It was clumsy, so we invented money so the swapping was easier. Adam Smith told that story in 1776. It's in the textbooks. It's treated as a settled fact, the barter myth. There's just one problem. The anthropologist David Graeber pointed out very loudly that there is essentially no evidence this happened at all. Anthropologists went looking for over a century for a society that ran on barter before it had money, and they never found a single one. What they found instead was credit. People in small communities didn't swap chickens for shoes, they kept track. I owe you, you owe me, debt came first. The neat little barter story that launched the modern economic framework appears to be, at least in Graeber's words, a myth, something we told ourselves and then mistook for history. Now sit with that, because that's the whole episode in a miniature. Here is a piece of official knowledge in every textbook taught for 2 centuries, and it's very likely wrong. Nobody had to hide anything. There was no secret society guarding the truth. The story was just convenient, and it flattered the way economists already wanted to share the world, so it survived long enough and long after the evidence stopped supporting it. So that to me is the real knowledge filter, not a cabal in a vault. It's much more boring, much more powerful. The institutions just want to shut things out that they think would threaten them. And it means that someone like Heather Lynn says the mainstream story might be wrong. The honest answer isn't to scoff. The honest answer is, well, yeah, of course it sometimes is. And here's how we find out, with evidence, with anthropology, with the slow grind of people checking each other's work. Not with a brotherhood, but with a method. So I'll give the lost knowledge crowd this. The textbook are not always right. Smith's barter story was wrong. The Hermetic dating was wrong. Newton's alchemy was hidden. Official knowledge can be a story we stop questioning. Where I get off this bus is the next stop. The leap from the textbook is wrong to therefore the gods came from Nibiru. Just because the map is wrong doesn't mean what you're saying is correct. So now let me bring this all the way up to today, because the occult, the hidden, isn't just an ancient thing. The dream at the center of the Anunnaki is the very specific dream, and it's alive right now in the modern elite. The dream is this: a special bloodline, superior beings, the few who are meant to rule and the many who are meant to serve. And between you and me, that's never going to die. And if you want to see that ancient dream wearing a modern suit, you don't need a clay tablet, you need the Epstein files. Now I'm going to go slow and tiered here because this is real, it's documented, and it's clearly one of the most disturbing revelations in modern times. The documented facts: Epstein was not just a financier and a sex offender. He was obsessed with the genetics and with what we call transhumanism, the idea of using technology to upgrade the human species. The New York Times reported in 2019 that he had told scientists he wanted to seed the human race with his own DNA by impregnating women at his ranch in New Mexico. Reporting says he spoke of 20 women at a time. He was fixated on bloodline, on genetic superiority, even on certain traits. In emails released in the files, he stressed that the supposed value of blue eyes, which he was convinced signaled intelligence. One document reportedly listed the attendees at a science gathering alongside their eye colour. Read that again. That is freaking weird. A man cataloguing people by the colour of their eyes. And this is not just a man. This is one of the world's most infamous, powerful, resourceful, and well-connected men. And it gets worse and better. He poured money into elite science. He donated around $6.5 million into a program at Harvard run by the mathematician Martin Novak. He funded the genetics George Church. He gave to the transhumanist movement directly, he bankrolled an intellectual salon called Edge, run by the literary agent John Brockman, that gathered some of the most famous scientists alive into a room paid for in part by Epstein. And he reportedly told people he wanted his head and his body frozen when he died so he could bring it back at a later date. He is even have said to have pointed to a Nobel laureate sperm bank as his model, the ancient pharaoh waiting to cheat death, except the pharaoh had a pretty big hedge fund. Now here's the historical hook that should make the hair on your arm stand up. The word transhumanism was popularized in 1957 by Julian Huxley. And Huxley was at the time the president of the British Eugenics Society. The shiny modern idea of upgrading humanity was, from its very framing, tangled up with the old ugly idea of breeding a better human and weeding out the rest. Transhumanism and eugenics were not distant cousins, they shared a cradle. And one survivor's account in the files describes herself as an incubator and describes the whole project in the language of a master race. Now that is as dark as it gets, and it is documented. We've spoken a bit about the Nazi Third Reich eugenics programs. Well, we have it here in Jeffrey Epstein. Who funded him? Who supported him? These are questions that we need answers to. But, and this is the counter narrative, and I've got to tell you where the documented part stops and tier 3, the speculative part, leaps. There is no evidence Epstein succeeded in any of it. No super race, no engineered bloodline. Investigators and geneticists have gone through the whole files and can't find anything. This was an obsession of fantasy, a conversation and donations from a creepy, ambitious, God knows what to call him, not an operational program that worked. Now again, we haven't found the evidence to date. I am sure those of you who have got this far are thinking similar to me. Just because we don't have it as tier 1 yet does not mean it hasn't happened. It's just been kept incredibly secretive by an occult. So although there's no super race, what is going on, what has gone on, well, let's wait a little bit longer. But at least for now, the honest reading is that Epstein has not bred the next Anunnaki. The honest reading is a little bit darker and more useful. The impulse behind the Anunnaki story, the belief in a chosen bloodline and the will to engineer it, is real, modern, and it's sitting in the rooms where the money and science meet. The myth isn't the danger. The men who want the myth to be true, they're the danger. And they don't come from Nibiru. They come from Manhattan, or they may come from a small place in the Middle East. And I say this a lot to my friendship group. We may not believe in the Anunnaki and all these ancient religions, but I am so sure, so incredibly sure, that the elites, the occult, definitely do. But this is the occult in the truest sense, not robes and candles, hidden rooms where powerful people chase the oldest fantasies there is, the fantasy of being more than human, about being someone that can cheat death, that can go past death. Okay, we park that for now. Let me take you up, away from all of this, to the biggest hidden thing of all, because there's a place where the occult, hidden, is not a metaphor or fantasy, or a creepy billionaire's hobby. It's the literal state of the universe, and the scientists say so themselves. Look up tonight. Everything you can see, every star, every galaxy, all the glowing gas, all the matter in your body and mind, all of it together, makes up about 5% of the universe. 5. The other 95% is hidden. We can't see it, we can't touch it, and even to this day, we don't fully know what it is. Roughly 27% of it is what we call dark matter. The rest, around 68%, is something even stranger. We call it dark energy, a force that seems to be pushing the whole universe apart faster and faster, and we don't really know what it is. The cosmos is mostly occult, mostly hidden. That's not fringe, that's the standard model of cosmology today. And here's the history. It's a beautiful example of the knowledge filter working in real time on real scientists with no aliens required. In 1933, a Swiss astronomer named Fritz Zwicky was studying a swarm of galaxies called the Coma cluster. He measured how fast they were moving, and he got shocked. They were moving so fast that the cluster should have flown apart long ago. There wasn't nearly enough visible matter to hold it together with gravity. So Zwicky did the math and said there must be a load of unseen mass in there, invisible matter, dark matter. And what did the scientific community do with this brilliant insight from a brilliant man? They ignored it, officially. For nearly 40 years, it was too strange. Zwicky himself was abrasive and made enemies, and his ideas sat in a drawer for nearly 4 decades. The establishment filtered it out, not with a conspiracy, with indifference and ego, and the ordinary resistance of people who don't want their picture of the universe disturbed. And it took until the 1970s and an American astronomer named Vera Rubin for the hidden mass to become undeniable. Rubin studied how galaxies spin, and she found something that should not happen. The stars at the edge of the galaxies were orbiting just as fast as the stars near the centre, which by the ordinary laws of motion is impossible unless there's a huge halo of invisible matter gripping around them. She found the same thing in galaxy after galaxy. The evidence piled up until it couldn't be filtered out anymore. Today, Vera Rubin is called the mother of dark matter, and there's a brand new observatory named after her, the woman they could have listened to decades earlier. And the evidence kept getting harder to ignore. There's a famous object called the Bullet Cluster, 2 galaxy clusters that smash through each other, where astronomers can actually map where the mass is, and it sits apart from where all the visible gas is, exactly as if a great invisible something is there. And that's about as close as we've seen to seeing the unseen. Yet, in true scientific style, there are still respected physicists who think dark matter might be wrong altogether, that maybe our theory of gravity itself is in need of fixing. I think so too. That argument is live, it's open, and it's happening in journals you can read. Nobody is hiding it. In fact, they're shouting about it. And I obviously love this story, and I want to tell it deliberately because it keeps most of us, hopefully all of us, honest. To the skeptics who say the mainstream never resist a good anomaly, well, here's the proof that it does. A correct, world-changing idea got sidelined for 40 years because it was inconvenient and its author was awkward. The filter is real. To the believers who say, see, the establishment hides the truth, well, here's the other half. The truth eventually came out, not through a secret brotherhood, not through initiation of hidden manuscripts. It came out because a stubborn observer pointed a telescope at a galaxy after galaxy and refused to look away. Because in the end, the method is stronger than the egos inside it. Thank God for science. Slower than we'd like, but stronger. And here's a sharp edge about the Anunnaki conversation. People in this field sometimes read dark matter as a hidden place. Maybe the gods are made of it. Maybe there's a hidden planet, Nibiru, lurking out there in the dark. And I get the romance of it. 95% of reality is genuinely unknown, so why not? I'm going to read that again. 95% of reality is genuinely unknown. But we've got to notice the move. What we don't know is being quietly swept. So therefore, the specific thing is true. And that's not the same sentence. The honest scientist looks at that 95% and goes, we don't know. Isn't that astonishing? Let's go find out. The myth makers look at the same 95% and say, well, that's where I'll put the gods. That's where I'll put the magic. The part that you can't check. The unknown is not a warehouse for whatever we want to believe. It's an invitation to do the hard work. And there's no astronomical evidence for a hidden planet on Stitchin's terms. The dark is real. Nibiru for now is not. And isn't the whole shape of it in the end the same word? Occult, hidden, covers the noblest thing and the lowest thing in the entire story. It covers the 95% of the cosmos that honest people are working and trying in the open to uncover. And it covers the locked rooms where frightened, hungry men hoard knowledge and bloodlines and call it destiny. Same word, opposite spirits. One reaches into the dark to share whatever it finds. The other reaches in on its own. Knowing which is which might be the only initiation that has ever mattered. So as we're starting to finish up, and this has been such an interesting series for me to do, I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as me. Let me draw the 3 of these together, because at the end of the day, this is the trilogy. It deserves a proper landing, not just a shrug. Across these 3 episodes, We've walked a hell of a long road. In the Dig, the first one, we looked at the archaeology and the claim and the discipline itself is rotten and gatekept. We found the knowledge filter, that's real but mundane, careers and reputations, not a cover-up of aliens. We also looked hard at the dark origins of this field, the way regimes like the Nazis and the Anarabun bent ancient history into a weapon, which is exactly why this territory has to be handled with evidence and not vibes. In the Sumerians, we went to the source, to Sumer, and the real, staggering achievements of the earliest cities. The base 60 maths, the writing, and we match stitching. Translations fall apart under the weight of actual scholarship, the work of people like Michael Heiser, and the standard reference dictionaries of that language. The Anunnaki were real words on real tablets. They were Sumerian gods. They were not astronauts, and Nibiru was not a 12th planet. The foundation of the modern myth is simply a mistranslation that nobody with relevant expertise accepts. And today, in the occult, we chase the hidden thread all the way through. The mystery cuts the real deep secrets for 2,000 years. The Pythagorean brotherhood that guarded numbers like a weapon. The Gnostics, who believe knowledge itself could save your soul. The Hermetic wisdom that turned out to be younger than the advertised date timeline. The Rosicrucian brotherhood that may never have existed except a story that drove people half mad with longing to join it. The Freemasons, real, reaching, and after 3 centuries, still empty-handed on the only secret that would matter. The greatest scientist in history hiding a million words of alchemy. The barter myth that run through textbooks for 200 years and was probably never true. The modern billionaire chasing a bloodline and immortality on a ranch. And the 95% of the universe that is, at least right now, genuinely and unprovably hidden from us. So what's the honest verdict? The tier 3 editorial note? Well, here it is straight. The specific Anunnaki story, the one that Stitchin sold and the internet adopted, is not supported by the evidence. The translations are wrong. The hidden planet isn't there. The ancient astronaut framework keeps failing at the one thing it would need to do, which is produce a single text, a single bone that can be explained by visitors from another planet. After decades of looking, the artifact has not appeared. I'm not going to pretend otherwise to keep you comfortable. That's not where we are. It could be out there. It could be hidden. I don't deny that. But for now, the general public haven't seen it. And I mean this, the hunger underneath the story is not stupid, and it's not going away, because it's the most human thing there is. The desire to know where we really came from. The suspicion that we've been told a lie time after time to cover it up. A tidied up version. The feeling standing under a sky that 95% is hidden and unknown, that there is so much more to be shown. Well, that feeling is correct. There is more, much more. The mystery is real. The cosmos really is mostly dark. The textbook really do get things wrong. Institutions really do filter out what they don't want you to see. Sometimes for 40 years, sometimes for hundreds. Families really do hide the magic of the dead. And yes, powerful men really do gather in private rooms and chase the oldest dreams there is. That there are a higher kind of human set above the rest of us by blood and entitled. And they are there to rule. Every piece of that is real. And I've put the documents in front of you. The ancient instinct to hide knowledge from the unworthy. The institutional reflex to bury whatever doesn't flatter the people in charge. The elite hunger for a chosen bloodline that runs in an unbroken line from a Sumerian king claiming descent from the gods all the way to a financier on a ranch cataloguing women by the colour of their eyes. None of that is invented. The believers are right about the most important thing. The world is stranger and less honest and more rigged in favour of the few than the tidy version ever wants to admit. The mistake, the only mistake, is to take that real and rightful hunger and feed it the easiest sweet story that comes along. To take what we don't know, which is honest and open and full of wonder, and trade it for they're hiding it, which is closed and small and almost always wrong. The occult, the hidden, isn't a secret some brotherhood is keeping from you and I in a vault. The genuine hidden dark matter, the deep past, the lost everyday lives of people 5,000 years ago is being uncovered slowly in public by people doing patient and unglamorous work. And we can join them. That's the door the secret societies always promised and never opened. It turns out it was never locked. It just asked for evidence instead of initiation. So keep the wonder, lose the gatekeepers, look up at that 95% you cannot see and let it thrill you. Then ask genuinely, how would we find out? The question asked honestly is the most powerful occult instrument ever built. It's the only thing that's ever actually pulled a secret out of the dark and into the light. Heather Lynn, to her great credit, doesn't ask you to swallow stitching. The best of the field doesn't either. So let's take away the wonder they offer and keep our heads and go and look for ourselves. That's the trilogy, the Dig, the Sumerians and the Occult. 3 episodes, 1 question. Who are we? Where did we really come from? The answer isn't a hidden brotherhood or bloodline or a 12th planet. It's out there in the dark, waiting for anyone patient and honest enough to go and find it. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and never let anyone tell you the door is locked. And as ever, if we've misrepresented or misinformed, please get it in the comments below. For those who have watched the episode in full on Danny Jones, what do you think about this? Did you learn anything? Did you change your mind? Is there something really obvious that I have missed? And until next time, here are 2 other videos for you. Rules still apply. If I've said anything wrong in them, please let me know. Stay curious. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next